It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, February 27th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is talking Phantoms today.
Yeah.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We as a show are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. You can find us over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, the Flyers are banged up. Let's, it's just one of those times during the season. I think every team goes through this at some point, and the Flyers have been generally lucky to not have a huge injury wave this year. But as of recording, we do not have an update on Drysdale, but it looked pretty bad.
He's missing time. Whether people are writing it is the same shoulder he got operated on. I don't think he's heading for an operation, but I think he's heading for being out for a month. Whether it's a separation, a dislocation, whatever it is, it's something like that. So yeah, look, you're right with the style of play that they play and the fast nature of the way they play. And you don't expect one of your own players to hurt one of your own players like Marc Staal did, but accidents happen. All those things taken into consideration, they are where they are. We all kind of knew, though, that they were going to wind down and have some problems. And, Sean Couturier hasn't missed as much time as we thought, but there's been some games where he's tired out and he has missed some games. So this was coming, no matter whether it was good, how it happened. It didn't really matter how it happened. It just they were somehow avoiding it.
Yeah. And, with Travis Konechny banged up, not sure when he's coming back in, maybe he misses another game or two.
Right.
Honestly, we just don't know. Ristolainen is still out.
That's the worrisome one, because if there was a market for him being traded, I'm sure the market has dried up right now. And just getting back in the game seems iffy right now.
Yeah, so, the Flyers are a little shorthanded, despite the fact that they have 8 defensemen. But I think that, we're at a time where, every point is critical. All these games, are ratcheted up a little bit. And I think that it's going to affect the Flyers. And I will be interested to see if they actually take the plunge and call up some more guys as reinforcements. You certainly think they could. Right.
Yeah, there's no doubt they should. They could. We don't know. I mean, if nothing else, you could call up another defenseman. Again, there's this code or thing that, John has, that he wants to be nice to the veterans. I get it. But in the end, if a veteran's done, he's done. So if you send Marc Staal down to the AHL, it's up to him. He could report or not report, but it would open up a valuable roster spot. And I think that's what they should do. And I like Marc Staal, don't get me wrong, but he is just not good right now. And he's not going to get any better. So you send him down. He doesn't have to report. He could end his career that way if he wants. He wasn't going to the playoffs with the Flyers most likely anyhow, because even if the Flyers make the playoffs, he wasn't going to be in the starting lineup. Like, it's just, this is a move that you can make and would be the best move for the organization, honestly.
I think so. But I do think that, facing the Tampa Bay Lightning as they are tonight puts them in a precarious position with all of these injuries, because Tampa is starting their playoff push, as they do every year. And, Cooper just figures out a way to motivate this team every single year
He
like
does.
clockwork. And it feels like that's about to happen right now where they've won their last couple of games in a row against the Isles and then the Devils. I mean, again, the Devils are having their own issues, but still, two really solid wins in a row, even though they lost some games before that. I do think that there's something different now with this team over the past couple of games. We saw Kucherov hit 100 points, first in the league to do so this
Hmm.
season. The last time the Bolts faced the Flyers, Tampa won 6-3 in January. It was, it was pretty rough that game. And they're fighting for their lives in that dreaded wild card land right now. As we talked about yesterday, it was like my nemesis of the week,
It was.
So yeah, Tampa's going to be real tough.
They're going to be real tough. They'll be physical too. They've got the scoring. They've got those top two lines. They've got Kucherov. They got the power play. They're going to put in Vasilevsky, who is now back to being really good again.
Yep.
And yeah, it'll be Vasilevsky against Urson, and Urson's going to have to outplay him. And the Flyers are going to have to play a different kind of game because they have to generate offense. They're going to have to score 4 goals in this game.
Yeah, they will. And it's interesting because Tampa does miss a lot of shots too.
They do.
They're very much like the Flyers, but they have a better finish.
Right.
So it's, their shooting percentage is much better than the Flyers, even though their shot attempts percentages are the same, which is really interesting.
That's a
But
crazy
you can,
mathematical thing there. Yeah.
yeah, it is very crazy. But given who they have on their team, well, no wonder they finish more, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
they
They've
have
got the
superstars
pedigree.
on that team.
Yes.
Looking at their stats again, just because Tampa tends to be such a different team in this, in the later months than they are in the earlier months. I just looked at kind of the last 10 games comparison for each team. You can score against Tampa. In February,
Hmm.
they've got 3.7 goals against per game. They're just so good at scoring themselves that they're going to win some of those
Yeah,
games.
their
But
defense right now without Sergachev is definitely weakened a little bit. Uh, they'll be dangerous going towards the playoffs though because they're going to have cap room to pick somebody up. They're not going to pick them up before this game. So yeah, their defense is hurt a little bit. But the thing is, yeah, you score a goal, they could trade right back and get it right back. That's the dangerous part.
yeah, and it was interesting because in their last game, Tampa played 11-7 in their lineup.
I remember, yeah, but that was out of
Again,
necessity. I don't know. I don't
right?
think they're doing that again.
No, I don't know that they will again, but I think that their depth is really good, and I think that's something that some of the other teams that are trying to claw their way up are missing. Even like the Pens, who the Flyers just lost to, they just don't have the depth that Tampa does, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't love Tampa's depth compared to what it used to be, but still compared to some other NHL teams, you're right. It's
Yeah.
still better than that. And then yeah, the parts that they do have, the healthy parts, could just be enough to beat you on their own. And again, Victor Hedman there's very few defensemen like him. So good luck facing him, and that's the thing. There's going to be matchups in this game. If I remember correctly, like last time, Stamkos had a lot of room in that last game, especially on the power play. So,
Mhm.
there was things that just only so many guys you can cover.
Yeah, and that's why it just seems like a game where the Flyers just have to really tighten things up defensively. And so that's why I want the most ideal lineup we can have out there defensively. And I don't want Marc Staal out there, right?
Right.
And if Drysdale's out, I you would think that logically you don't want to start like a fresh guy from the Phantoms in a game like this, but also maybe you need that support and those younger legs out there, right?
Yeah, they need some young legs for sure. Um, if you get the right guy that could spark you, I mean, we saw what like Matt Rempe did for the Rangers, sparking them.
Mhm.
You bring up the right guy, it could spark your team. And sometimes you don't know who that guy is going to be. So I'm not saying you bring up Bobby Brink's going to spark the team because they know Bobby Brink. But who knows? You bring up Ronnie Adder, he could spark your team. because he is a little bit of a bigger guy. He's got a good shot. Um, I would certainly look at doing that, but again, that's me.
Well, you mentioned a couple of phantoms there, and that is a perfect segue into our next couple of segments where we are going to do our weekly check-in with the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. And, we have some intriguing updates, I think, on Bobby Brink, Samu Tuomaala, and the team overall. And we will do that coming up next. It is an important part of the season, and this team is in the thick of the playoff hunt. But regardless of where we are in the standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. You can also play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, which is coming back, and college football on Sleeper, and entries can be made in under a minute. All you have to do is pick whether NHL superstars like Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, or Austin Matthews, plus Flyers top players will record more or less than their Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you have to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail those picks so you can start winning big. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. On tomorrow's show, we will be recapping the game against Tampa and we'll be answering your mailbag questions. So get them in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail, send us a message on Twitter, or comment over on our YouTube channel. So the Phantoms this week, they had a very busy week, unlike last week. They went 2-1, winning against the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins and Charlotte Checkers in overtime, and then lost to the Checkers on Sunday 6-3. It was a drubbing, to say the least. Overall, I think that you look at this weekend, obviously every single point is important. These are division rival games, and so even though you win, you're still giving those other teams points, which is not helpful in the long run, I would say.
They needed regulation wins against Charlotte, or at least one regulation win. It definitely hurt them. And these are the kinds of things you can't get these points back. And the Phantoms, even though they're winning, they had a winning weekend, they're slipping because they're not taking advantage. They're not, in a lot of ways, you can't keep trying to come back in games. Like, it's great that they can, but eventually it catches up with you. And it's the math that catches up with you. Because if you are a team that just keeps coming back and wins in overtime, you eventually lose, because if you're bleeding those points to teams you're chasing, you're in trouble.
Right. I think that was kind of the theme of this weekend, was trying to come back. So on Wednesday they were down 2-0. They win 3-2. It's great. They actually played really well in this game overall. I think it was a tight game. And the goals just happened to not go their way in regulation for a little while, but
Right.
then they did, and and they wind up winning that game. So I was less worried about the game against Wilkes-Barre Scranton, but coming back from 2 goals down twice and 1 goal once on Saturday, I mean, that game was absolute chaos
That
for
is.
both teams. Like, both teams played terribly, I would say, overall in that one. And Sunday, I think they were just out of gas. They battled back twice. They even, like, got it tied up at one point, but then Charlotte just pulled away and there was just nothing left in the tank. And that's just the nature of the game in the AHL when you have those 3-game weekends like that. But they did, a back-to-back. Teams have back-to-backs all the time in this league, and this is the kind of game they have to find out how to, you just pull through in the end, and they couldn't.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, you have to start sweeping some of these weekends. They're falling too far behind. Um, There's an interesting note that you had put about the Cooper Marody interview that he and Adder trained together. Yeah, because they in Michigan.
Yep.
Marody really deserves a game this year, if nothing else. But like right now, where they're severely banged up, people might not like this. If you don't want to bring up Brink because you feel like there's more to learn or whatever, blah blah blah, fine. Even though he's doing good now, fine. You want to bring up somebody that you can play good minutes and not have to worry about and can play more than 10 minutes like Atkinson, it's Cooper Marody.
I know. That if you're gonna sit Cam Atkinson, Cooper Marody is the guy you call up.
Yeah.
100% agree.
Yeah.
100% agree in terms of style of play, where you could put him
Yep.
in the lineup.
Yep.
There's gonna be some reliability there. I think he would jump at the chance.
Yep.
And put everything out there in a game. He's still the team leader in points. He's got 43 points in 49 games. And, for a team where you want some of your more like touted prospects to be your team leaders in scoring, well, they're not. He is. And
Right.
there should be a reward for it. Now, he is a negative 20. So, but I think it's partially due to usage and partially due to the fact that that's not his role, right?
Right.
So I think that
He
it's
can play a
something to
more
consider.
responsible role. I've seen him do it. Um,
Yeah.
so I think he could do it. You ask him to do it, I think he can do it. But there, he's definitely more offensive, taking more chances. With the big club, he wouldn't. But we're not going to see him with the big club. But he probably should.
Yeah, I think it would be an interesting choice, and I do think he's a guy that would take full advantage of it and work to the Flyers' advantage. Yeah, the reason why I pulled that note out of his interview during one of the games is that they trained together on shots and specific shot placement and things
Hmm.
like that, Addard and Marody. And it's something we've been talking about with the Flyers. And Addard, he got a shorthanded goal this weekend, his 10th of the year, having a real solid season down there. And we keep harping on it, but he's a guy we want to call up, right?
Yeah, I mean, and you know what? If they don't want to hire him as a player with the Flyers, then offer him a job as shooting coach because maybe he's young enough that
Well,
he'll
that's
get
the
through to him.
Michigan coach, but
Yeah, but I mean, he's doing it, and then he could teach some of the others, like Owen Tippett. York had a nice goal the other game, but still he misses too much. Forster is getting a little better at it. Like all these guys could go through a summer session of this, and they should.
yeah, they absolutely should. Really interesting. Ollie Lixel's one game. We talked about this on yesterday's show. He gets the call up again because he had one game down with the Phantoms, 2 goals, 2 assists. That upped his points per game at 0.94 for much fewer games than some of the other guys. And for a guy that, had to sit and not really play much to come into a game and have that kind of production is really great. And then he played real well in the Flyers versus Penn. So, I think wherever he is, he's going to be a really good asset to have.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about him with the Flyers too is if he gets his first NHL goal, I think that might break through for him. He needs that. He's been getting closer, but it just hasn't happened. And I just feel like if it does happen, you might even be able to get more offense.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 players that could not be having more opposite experiences right now. That's Bobby Brink and Samu Tuomaala. And I want to get into details about them, and we will do that coming up next.
You've heard of our online families and couples course and taken advantage of the locked on 20%, 25% discount running to the end of the month. But what about the live seminars? In both sports and business, the challenge in differentiating candidates and recruits is an endless battle. Everyone can demonstrate their measurables and qualifications, but we all know it's the intangibles that matter when those things are similar. Contact Cino Consulting for their team and management seminars to get a peek behind the curtain and watch your next recruiting class or hiring group become one of the most effective you've ever seen, both because you've identified the right candidates and because you've learned how to communicate and motivate them in accord with their own preferences. but you aren't in business and management or working with a team, we pay referrals. Make some money, making your workplace and your favorite teams better. Every group works better together at the end of year one than in week one. So contact Cino Consulting at CaminoConsulting.ca and get on the fast track to understanding.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel over on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league like Locked On NHL. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe. Russ, Bobby Brink is somebody we talked a little bit about on yesterday's show because of the call-up situation, and there was some debate of Ollie Lixell versus Bobby Brink, and we were kind of like, why not both?
Right.
Especially if there's a need there. But I think that Bobby Brink has played really well, and but I'm not sure he's learned whatever he's supposed to learn down there yet either, because his complete game just isn't there. And I still think that he's going to struggle, in puck battles and
Right.
things like that, which is something that he was having trouble with before they sent him down, that he was losing the puck on takeaways a lot.
Yeah.
And so, I think that you look at his weekend, 3 goals, 2 assists over 3 games. He currently has the highest shooting percentage on the team at 20.7% in only 11 games played. He's at a point per game, pretty much. So, he just doesn't have the number of games that you want to put him in the same category as the other guys in terms of those stats. But so when you're looking at all of this, like, how do you make the decision on what to do with him here?
I decide, do I need the offense or do I want to play it safe? If I want to play it safe, fine. Then don't call him up. If I need the offense, then I got to call him up and just see if I could just make him marginally better. The thing with this equation is he may never get it right for Torts. That's a reality now. And this one more offseason that he has, and I think that's all he's got with this coach, may not solve it all. He might need 2 years to fully solve that problem in the NHL, and the only way he's going to do it is by playing. Is that going to be with the Flyers or with somebody else? Like, that's the big question now.
Yeah, it's a really difficult question to answer, I think, given who the coach is and what he's been demanding of his players, and Bobby Brink specifically, that under a different coach, you might just say, call him up and he'll learn what he needs to at the NHL level.
Right.
And that's just not what Torts wants to do, as we know. So I don't think either way is necessarily good or bad. I just think they're different. But I do think that he is a kid with a ton of potential. And I think that he's at a point where you really need to boost his confidence on that front. And I think he's getting it in Lehigh Valley. And so part of me doesn't want to disrupt that. But I do think also, given the potential need with the Flyers, and, again, if they're willing to sit Cam Atkinson for a little bit, I do think ultimately bringing him back up is the right thing to do, and give him a nugget of a reward so that he'll continue to keep playing that way.
Yeah, I mean, Atkinson has played 20 more games and has 10 more points. Brink was actually a plus with the Flyers, +7, where Atkinson's a -20. So how egregious are these, puck battles that he's losing compared to Atkinson, who's maybe doing well with puck battles and not much else? I mean, that's what you have to look at.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a huge deal. And so, I think in a world where they sit Cam Atkinson, I think you call him up. If they don't, I don't know that he's going to get the right ice time to make it worth it.
That's fair.
So that's kind of where I stand right now, but that could change depending on what happens and what we hear about all this injury information. So to be continued there. Samu Tuomaala is definitely on the struggle bus. I believe he sort of hit the wall in terms of games played, in terms of Europe versus North America. So he's got 1 goal and 3 assists in his last 10 games. He hasn't scored since February 2nd against Hershey. This weekend, he just had 1 assist for the 3 games total, 1 shot on goal for the weekend, which, by the way, the Phantoms set a terrible record on Sunday for the least shots in a game that they've ever had as a franchise with 13. So the fact that he got 1 was a big deal, I guess, but
Yeah.
in that game. But still, like, you would expect him to have a lot more, and especially because he's had a generally really good season. I honestly think he's just tired at this
He
point.
is. He's tired. He's a good player. He's shown that he can hang in North America. He needs to come back next year, be the best player in Lehigh. If he could do that, then I think he's caught up to, being behind in development for those, year and a half struggle and just to get ice time overseas, and now maybe hitting the wall here.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely what it is. So I have faith that he can get it
Yeah.
back together, and I do think he's gonna train differently this offseason. I absolutely
Yeah, I think
think
he
he
should
will.
stay in Philly and do that, and that could help him. Now, for guys like Elliot Denoye, the rubbers hit the road hard. Like he's hit, he's finding out what happens when when the talent level compresses.
Yeah, I think he's gonna have an interesting offseason as well. Wanna mention Ethan Sampson got his first pro goal
Good
on
for him.
Sunday. So congrats to him. Yeah, so he's got a goal and 7 assists for the season. Not too shabby
No,
of a first pro season for a guy like him. So I think
there's some
that,
talent there. It needs to be
yeah,
cultivated.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that the Phantoms are in a spot where they really have to step it up and get regulation wins this weekend. They've got a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, triple game weekend. So they're at Utica on Friday. Saturday, they're home against Bridgeport, who they should win against, but you know,
That's a tough
who
trip,
knows?
though. You got to go to Utica and then come back. That's not
Yeah.
fun.
No, and then Sunday, they're playing against Hershey, one of the toughest teams in
Yeah,
the league, so when they're gonna be the most tired, but this is, like you
this
said,
is
when
the
the rubber
grind.
meets the road. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is the grind. Don't eat too much White Castle. Train hard. Eat your
Yeah.
vitamins and win 3 games. They need to win 3 games.
Yeah, and I think they can do it if they just tighten up their game
Yeah.
a little bit, and play more like they did on Wednesday's game,
Now the
and,
only thing is, Rachel, if Sandstrom has a couple of good games, Twitter's going to break. You know that,
well,
right?
yeah, I mean, I would say he had a good game on Wednesday.
Right.
But much fewer shots. He faced 24 shots on Wednesday.
Right.
So, 2 of them went in. But then you look at a game with 33 shots against, he lets 5 in. So
Right.
it's not like it's just not there in the
I
way
know,
that I
but
think
if
people
people
are hoping.
right, but if people see 2 good games in a row, they're going to start saying we got to see him over Peterson, and it's like I'm not sure that that's going to happen.
I don't know. But I'm sure Parker Gahagan will get one of those 3 games, probably the
Correct.
middle game. So we'll at least have a rested Felix Sandstrom against
Hmm.
Hershey on Sunday. So that will help, I think, in that one.
Can't hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. But in the meantime, we will be back tomorrow. We will recap that game against Tampa from tonight, and we will have our mailbag. So send in those questions via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day, everyone.